Welcome everybody to this webinar on how to use social media as a professional speaker. So what I will try to do in the next half an hour or so is to give you a little bit of an overview of how you can use different social media platforms and other tools to market yourself as a professional speaker. And that will be the focus, because that's what we do here in the club as professional speakers. But obviously most of the techniques or the tools and platforms that I will show you, you can use them for any type of activity, any type of service or product that you want to market as a freelancer. That is something that you can use there as well. So, and I will also not only talk about social media in the strict sense, but I will include other online technology as well. And to do that, I will now switch to the PowerPoint presentation. I hope that works and you can all see it. First, let's start with some general remarks. What we've seen over the past roughly 10, maybe 15 years is a fundamental shift in the world of marketing. And what was once the domain of only large multinational companies or brands is now basically open to all of us. And there is this famous idea of a level playing field where each of us, no matter whether we're a one-man or a one-woman show or we're a big multinational corporation, we can have the same footprint because the technology is available to all of us, and it's very easy to use. The technology itself is in most cases either completely for free or at least only a nominal available for a nominal fee. So we can, at least in theory, have the same kind of impact as Zara, the brand that you saw there, or a big company such as Nestle. And that is a great opportunity if we have something to sell, whether this is a service, a product, or ourselves as professional speakers. We have opportunities that generations before us simply didn't have. So that's the pro side. But obviously the con side is also that we live in a world of abundance of content. So if you want to be seen, if you want to be noticed, you really have to stick out. So it can be a bit of a curse and a blessing. What we've seen generally in the world of marketing communications is a move towards what we call content marketing, using valuable content as a vehicle to get across our message and to reach our targeted customers. And although this is something that's being talked about a lot, it's not something new. I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Oetker, the famous German brand. And they started doing something even at the end of the 19th century. And today they're known for many things, including frozen pizzas and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, that didn't exist. They were originally a company that produced baking soda, so product that you needed to bake. And they asked themselves the questions, how can we reach our customers better? And their customers in those days were obviously women, housewives. And they came up with the idea of setting up a cookbook. And they launched a series of cookbooks. And these cookbooks still exist today. And so they're still being published. So this is probably the longest standing example of a content marketing strategy. And the idea behind this is obvious. You produce something, content, that is not just advertisement. So it's not just to sell your message, but it has a standalone value for the group of customers that you're trying to reach. So they will ideally use it often, such as a cookbook. It will be on a shelf in the kitchen somewhere, and ideally you will take it out every day. You will search for recipes, you will work with it, and whenever you do so, the brand, in this case Dr. Oetker, will be there visible somewhere. Another example, which you may know if you are a foodie, if not, you've probably heard of it, Guide Michelin, the very famous international restaurant guide, that was started by Michelin obviously. Michelin is a tire company, and they started that in the 1920s, originally for car drivers. There were not that many at those in those times, and the cars were also not very reliable. They were slower and they were not very reliable. So if you had a car, if you happened to have a car, it was very important. You wanted to drive somewhere from one city to another. You needed a good guide that would tell you where to eat, where to sleep, because you would probably not be able to do the entire trip in one day, and also where to find a garage or repair shop in case your car broke down, which tended to happen more frequently. And they also asked themselves, well, how can we present ourselves through a content strategy? And they started producing this guide, which was originally, as I said, for car drivers. This is just to give you two examples of what it means to be a content marketing provider. Now let's move to the present day, and this guy here is a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk. He's a guy from New York. He has many things. He has a wine business. He has a media company. He's very famous, some kind of a guru on social media issues. His company works with many big clients on social media strategies. And he actually says that if you want to be seen and be discoverable on social media, you need to strive and be careful that you don't fall from wherever you're sitting. He says you need to put out about 100 pieces of content every day. And actually he has come up with a slide deck. I will send you some links afterwards so you don't have to take notes. I will provide you with links to everything I mentioned in this webinar, so no need to write everything down. He has a little slide deck with, I think, 270 pages where he explains exactly how you can reach that number, or at least a very high number. Now, don't worry if that sounds impossible to do. I don't think you have to start with 100. You can do much less, but it's very important that you have this idea ingrained. It is a very crowded field. It's a very noisy field. So if you want to stand out, you have to produce not just high quality, but also a lot. And that may sound like a contradiction, which it is, obviously, but only to a certain extent. And one of the things that Gary Vaynerchuk, rightly so, in my opinion, emphasizes is that don't worry too much about the production value or the production quality of whatever you put out. There are so many people who have interesting content, but they're not putting it out because they feel, oh, well, you know, maybe the video is not good enough, the lighting was not right, the audio quality could have been better, it's not polished enough, and so on and so forth. And obviously, you should strive to have it as good as possible, but not to the extent that it gets in the way of putting things really out, because then you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So speed matters. Don't overthink the production quality too much. Get stuff out. And what that can be, I will talk about this in a moment. Now let's begin with the very basic. And the very basic thing that I think everybody needs who is out there professionally trying to market themselves is you need to have your own website. And if you don't know much about websites, that will probably mean for you a website with your own domain name hosted on a platform called WordPress. Very easy to use, very easy to set up. Even if you're not a techie, you can get hosting for a couple of euros a month, so it's not expensive. And you can start with maybe one page and then gradually expand it from there. And just to give you an idea, so what you can see here, this is actually my own website, and it runs, as I said, it runs on WordPress, so the platform that I mentioned. And just to give you an idea how this looks like, so you have the main page where you have a little short blurb about who I am. You have some excerpts of the latest blog posts that I've published here. Here to the right, you can see this little funny yellow logo is actually my Snapchat code. So if you want to follow me on Snapchat, you can scan it. Below that, you see this is embedded. You see some of my latest tweets. You have some upcoming events, and actually the webinar that we're in right now, I've announced it here. and so on and so forth. And then there are additional pages that you can access through the navigation at the top. So about what my work is, my expertise, who I am, about speaking, Toastmasters, and so on. And obviously also in the upper right-hand corner, you see a lot of icons that link to different social media platforms. So this is my website, and this is my central hub. So everything starts there, and whenever I meet someone or I talk about myself and what I have to offer, if I point people to the website, from there they can find everything else. So they can find my Twitter account, they can find my Facebook page, and so on and so forth. Why is this so important? Because of all the things that we were talking, this is the only space that you truly own. Together with your mailing list, if you have one, the address is on that. That's also something that you generally own. But everything else is someone else's home. So if you have a page on Facebook, if you have a Twitter account, if you have an Instagram account, which you should, I'll mention that in a moment, then you're always operating on somebody else's turf and under somebody else's rules. And that means that platforms may disappear, they may simply close down, they may kick you off for whatever reasons they may have, or they may change the way they operate in a way that you don't like. So you essentially have zero control over what happens with your presence on other platforms. So therefore, it's very important that you have at least one space that is truly your own and that you can control. Because if you have your own domain name, then this is yours and you will have it with a hoster. But if you're not happy with the hoster, you can always move it to some other place. Now, let's talk a little bit about these platforms. And you can see the logos here. This is not an extensive list of social media platforms by no means, and this is just a selection. You may have others that you find important. And what is crucial here is that these things also change. So this is November 2019. If we were to meet again, talk about this a year from now, 2 years from now, this list will very likely have changed. Some services will have dropped because they're not relevant anymore. Others will be added to that list. And that doesn't really matter. So whatever you do, you should always be platform agnostic. So it doesn't really matter whether you're on Twitter or on Instagram. Don't fall in love with any one platform. Just use the platform that provides the most value to you at any given moment. And value in this sense means reach and the ability to interact. If you ask me today what the most important social media platforms for most professionals are, including professional speakers, these here would be my recommendation. It's Twitter, which is a short media service where you can post little short updates and interact with other people. YouTube, the video platform, obviously very important for speakers because that's a place where you can put recordings of your speeches. LinkedIn, the primary professional social media platform where you should be regardless of whether or not you're an aspiring professional speaker, because it allows you to interact with colleagues, business partners, and so on in a professional setting. Facebook, which is also a social media platform with a more generic use. Instagram, which is the logo in the center, which is a photo and video sharing platform, which is very, very popular. Very important. I think will grow in importance in the future. And then finally, the left-hand corner, this yellow and white logo, that is Snapchat, which in many aspects, many functionalities is very similar to Instagram. Basically, Instagram started copying some of the functionalities, so they offer similar services. Remains to be seen a little bit what the future of Snapchat is, but it's also a very, very important platform. Now, how much the relative importance of each of these platforms is will vary by what kind of content you want to put out and also what target group you have. I work at a university, as some of you may know, so we deal a lot with very young people, and the younger demographics, they are, for example, mostly on Instagram and Snapchat. Facebook with young people, 15 to 20, 20-something, completely out. Older people tend to be on Facebook. As funny as that may sound, now a platform for middle-aged to elderly people. If you want to target, for example, journalists, Twitter is a great platform, and so on and so forth. So it depends a little bit on who you're trying to reach and what content you're trying to put out. Now, speaking of content, what could you put there? Because the platforms themselves, obviously, they serve no purpose if you have nothing to offer. And the list here is, in my view, endless, and it's just up to your own personal creativity. For a speaker, obviously, one of the most important things you can put up there is image or recordings of your speeches. So whenever you give a speech, you should try to have it somehow recorded, at least in an acceptable quality. And if it's a good speech, and I suppose that you're only giving good speeches, then you can use that, put it on YouTube, for example, to showcase what you have on offer. Because somebody who will want to hire you, book you for a speech, they will obviously naturally want to see you in action, see what you can deliver on stage. There's also the ability to offer training courses. There are platforms where you can offer a training course if you have something interesting that you want to showcase, that you want to sell. You can set up your own little training course. You can use short videos that you record, for example, from from conferences, or where you just explain something, a smaller aspect of your field of expertise to the audience. This can even be recorded just through your smartphones. Very easy, very low hurdles in terms of the stuff that you need. You could live stream platforms such as Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube as well. They offer live streaming abilities where whenever you have a stable internet connection and you have an event, you can stream live to your audience. You can share photos. You can share, obviously, your thoughts in writing on a platform such as Twitter. You can use quotes from yourself or from your books and put them out there. You can have a podcast, for example. That's something that I find very interesting, actually a project that I'm working on right now of establishing my own podcast. You can write an ebook, which is not social media per se, but it's also online media. You can publish it through Amazon and other channels. And all these things will make you visible. They will give you credibility. They will establish a they will establish you as a professional in your field and an expert on whatever topic you have, and as such make it much more likely that somebody will actually come out and hire you. Now, when we're talking about the production of content for online platforms, there are essentially three ways that you can do so, and they're symbolized by these delicious macarons here. Let's start with the first one in the center, and that is to create. That is obviously the most important, but also the most time-consuming. So whatever you have in terms of original content, speeches that you give, blog posts that you write, courses that you design and present online, that is creation. And again, invariably, that will take some time. As I said, don't overdo it, especially not when it comes to production perfection, but obviously it has to be high quality. So this takes time, and there's only so much you can produce in terms of original content. The second one is to curate, and this is what social media is great for. You will be an expert in your field, I assume. And that means that you are in a position where you can curate content for the audience that you're trying to reach. Curation is a term that comes from the world of museums. So curators, traditionally in museums, they are the ones who decide which parts of a collection is being put on display, because most museums, they have so many things, they cannot put them, they cannot showcase them all at the same time. So curators decide when they set up an exhibition which items in which order should be presented to the audience. And the same thing applies to social media. So if you're able to curate, which means find and share valuable content that other people have produced, to your followers and they will like what they see, then they will come to your social media platforms to get that content. So curation is a very, very important part of social media strategy, in particular because there's just so much content out there. Nobody can read it all. So if you can establish yourself as someone who is known to feed and forward and retweet and whatnot interesting content to your audience, then people will want to follow and engage with you. And the final part of this 3 macaron strategy is try to reuse as much of the content that you have in different formats. Let me give you an example. Let's assume you have a speech, say like half-hour speech that you gave somewhere, you have it recorded, you put it up on YouTube. Now what you can do is you can split it up, and there are tools to do that help you, online tools, in little 10, 20 second segments with the snappiest, the best quotes from that speech, and you publish it, say, on Instagram or on Twitter. If you have a blog post, you could do the same with quotes. You could pull out some quotes, you could put them on Twitter, on Facebook, somewhere else. So usually you can take content and you can repackage it in different formats. If you have a blog, if you have a podcast, for example, you have an episode where you talk about something, you could have it transcribed. There are services, again, who do that for you. And then you have a blog post. So you transfer what you have in audio format, you transfer it with very little additional effort into a blog post. So there's plenty of opportunities that you can use the same content, adapt it, tweak it slightly, and use it for a different medium. And that obviously is a very effective way as well. And then finally, there is a fourth one, and that is to follow, to like, and to comment on other people's content. So when you're on Twitter, when you're on Instagram, you will probably be familiar with hashtags where you can follow certain topics that are related to what you have to offer. So you can see what other people are posting. You can also follow people who are important or influential in your area. And whenever they post something, you can like, you can comment on what they're saying, you can add your own opinion to that. And by that, you will take part of the social media conversation, and obviously you will also be seen and be seeable. So there are essentially 4 ways in which through which you can produce content and then spread it out on the different platforms that I mentioned. What I want to do now is to give you an idea, show you a few tools that you can use that will help you produce the content. The platforms I've mentioned, they are very easy to use. You go there, you sign up. Usually you can use them either in a browser on your desktop or on a dedicated app on your smartphone or tablet. So that's very straightforward. Opening an account on Twitter, on Instagram, YouTube, very, very easy. And generally these platforms are also for free. Now, to help you produce content, there are a gazillion of services. So this is just a selection, just to give you an idea of what you can do. For example, there's a service called Canva. And this service helps you produce graphs for social media that you can see here. Let me see if you can go in here. No, this is not what I wanted. Here. So you can produce graphs, for example, that you can then post. Like these infographics. You can work with data. You can use photos. You can put text on it. You have different forms of charts here that you can select. Very easy, very straightforward. Just click and point. You can work with photos. See what we can do here. So if you have an image, or you can also use stock photography, and you can crop it, you can put text on it, and then you can very easily put it on social media. Here you have something like a cartoon. Very similar service. And again, it has a free service but also generally these sites have paid subscriptions as well. Something that I use, because we happen to have an Adobe Creative Suite subscription here, is Adobe Spark, which is very similar, similar in functionality, works very well. Actually, I'm logged in here, so you can see some of the stuff that I did. Some of it is actually for professional speakers as well. So just to go in here, this is something that I did to post that professional speakers was at a different location. So basically you choose the format, the font, the colors. This is the stock photography that you can pull directly into the image. Then you can see the logo, the Toastmasters logo. This is something that I have set up. Once it's set up, I just have to pull it in there. And then in basically like a couple of minutes max, I can produce very professionally looking, slick looking images that I can then use to publish on different platforms. Same works also for video, and again, there are different services. This is one that I have been using a little bit. It's called InVideo, and you can create all sorts of videos. Just go in here, just by clicking and dragging. Let's see here. You can see some of the stuff that they're doing. So this is also for social media. So very easy to work. You type in stuff. You can pull images in or also videos. You can select music. You can overlay text and so on and so forth. Generally, these services, if you want a bit more functionality, you have to pay. There's one great site that I encourage you to check out. It's called AppSumo, and that is a site where you often get very good deals from these services when they're just starting out. So for relatively little amount of money, you can get lifetime deals where you don't have to pay a monthly or yearly subscription, but you pay maybe $50, $100, $150 one-time fee, and you can use these services for life, or at least as long as they exist, which there's no guarantee. But these are generally very, very good deals, especially for freelancers when you don't want to shell out enormous amounts of money for these services. So this is video production. This is another. What's this? I just want to get out here. This is a tool called Content Studio. This is a platform that helps you push out content to many different platforms. So if you have many different platforms, sometimes you might want to share the same information on different platforms, or you just want to adapt it to very marginally, then a tool such as Content Studio helps you with that. So they will push out information to many different channels. You can also time things. So you can say exactly at what point in time the information is supposed to go out. And you can then also see they have analysis functions, how much engagement a particular post got, how many people saw it, how many people liked it, how many people replied to it, and so on and so forth. And then the final thing that I wanted to mention is a bit different. I didn't mention that, or just very briefly, is I think you should have a mailing list or a newsletter that people can subscribe to. Very important as well. Email is not dead, despite being a quite dated technology. We all rely on it. It is probably one of the best ways to reach people, much better than Facebook or any other, where your post may not be seen by many people. So try to get hold of the email addresses of your potential customers and send them information, obviously useful information. Don't spam them. This is MailChimp. This is one service that we also use at Professional Speakers. So our own newsletter runs on MailChimp, and their free account, I think, goes up to 2,000 subscribers. So if you're below 2,000 subscribers, which is something you have to reach in the first place, then the account is totally free. And I would absolutely recommend that you set up something like that, especially because this is what I said initially, is in addition to the website, this is the only channel that you truly own, because you have the list with the email addresses. If you don't want to use MailChimp anymore, you want to move it to another service, you can always pull the data off upload it to another service, and then you're good to go. Something which does not happen on any of the other platforms. So you cannot just pull all the people who like your Facebook page, you cannot just pull them out of Facebook and take them somewhere else. The platform will not let you do that.